Day 6 is all about dissociation, learning to move one part of your body while stabilizing through another. And this is where true core control lives. If you're hypermobile or feel like your joints move too much, today will be especially helpful. We'll anchor the lower limbs to help unlock mobility where it really matters through the pelvis and rib cage. We start with breath and mobility drills, isolating movement at either the pelvis or the rib cage. Then we'll start to layer in rotation and hamstring-driven control, as well as glute activation to challenge your ability to stabilize under a load. This is one of those sneaky tough days that feels so good. Let's get started and build that control. See you inside the workout. Welcome back, day 6 in our advanced core challenge. Today is about stability and control. So I've got Melissa and Kara doing it alongside you. Equipment you need is a yoga block. If you have squat wedges, grab those. If you don't worry. You can use a rolled up yoga mat for that. A foam roller, some light dumbbells, a Pilates ball. Have your wall, and then a towel, a long band, and a bench or an ottoman. So let's get started with it. We are gonna meet on the wall with our Pilates ball. And you're gonna put that ball between your belly and your thighs. So we can use props to help block different parts of the body. We force compression in the front so we can move expansion in the back. You're gonna bring your hands to the wall. And then you've kind of seen a version of this before. So you're going to use that drag of the heel of the hand to get the lats on, and we can breathe all into this back part of our body, and sits bones are open. Watch your neck. You want to bring that up into a more neutral position so you don't shut off the air, your airway, and then you are going to hold that for about 8 breaths. So let's just start there. 8 nice long deep breaths, airways open. Inhale, the breath is flowing into the posterior. When we feel breath here, we get breath and opening in the posterior of our pelvis as well. So always starting with a nice breathing drill is a great way to start a workout if you've not focused on that. We want our pressure to move in 360 degrees. We want our pressure to be able to have somewhere to go back up and into off of our pelvic floor and core. And so this is why we just keep coming back to that first primary day 1 concept always. 8 breaths. Then you are going to grab your yoga block. Or if you have a small book, that might help as well. So you'll notice that their yoga blocks are not the very big, thick, and chunky ones, because what we're going to do might be a little too difficult for that. If you have a big, thick one and it feels like it's uncomfortable, grab a book or 2. So you're going to come down onto hands and knees and put that block underneath their knee. So this is a bare hip shift. Now in this knee, will you start with the one closest so they can see? Yep, perfect. So here, I want Melissa to bring her knee back further. So I want her knee to be in line with her hip so that when she is shifted over it, she's getting that nice line. So check yourself for that. And then when you're in this position, you want you to push your weight from the unshifted side over to the side of the block. So kind of just make sure that we're not on the block, but shifted off of it. And then I want you to hike the hip up towards your ears, and then find length as you unhike. And that's our position that we're going to be working in. So you're going to hold that position there. When you breathe, you should be feeling a really nice opening here. And then she's going to take her same side hand. So the left hand, left knee is on the block. Left hand's going to reach, and she's going to reach it up and open like a thread the needle. And then they're going to come on through. So reach up and open. Come on through, but if you've done thread the needle, you're going to keep your elbow pretty straight, and you're going to keep pressing away through the shoulder. And we've got it. Beautiful. I love when we do things wrong here, or maybe my instructions don't quite match up. Maybe you're feeling that at home, and then we all together find the right movement. So you're going to do about 5 reaches each side. You can see how as Melissa reaches through, if you're used to a typical thread the needle, which nothing's wrong with that. What we're really trying to get is this length and this back body opening while we keep pushing away through the same side arm. Now we're going to switch. So what you're going to see a progression of happening today is we want to start to be able to independently move the rib cage, independently move the pelvis, and then we start to move different parts of our body opposite of each other. So we can start to learn how we can load and create propulsion through the body and the core. Nice job as you reach through, with different parts of our body operating separate of one another. So we can find stability in some areas to allow us to have mobility in others. So think if you're hypermobile, you really benefit from stability at your foot and ankle and knee, while we can have more mobility than in our rib cage and pelvis. Nice job. So really nice opening through that posterior glute right now. As you reach, you inhale, get some nice length through that back body, expand into the posterior, exhale as you open. All right, we're gonna head over to the wall with our feet on the wall. We're gonna be in a 90-90. So that is 90 degrees from foot, knee, and hip. And then the ball goes between the knees in our 90-90. And you're gonna have a dumbbell as well. That was my fault, I forgot that. Okay, so here's what's gonna happen in our 90-90. First, go ahead and set up. Remember, you're gonna find your tripod foot. You're gonna drag isometrically through the heels. The proximal hamstring turns on. Our pelvis comes slightly posterior and we squeeze the ball. That's our baseline for our 90-90. Then you're gonna reach the arms overhead with that dumbbell between the hands. Make sure the core is on, so exhale, get those ribs internally rotated and on. And what's gonna happen when we have our subsequent inhales is it goes lateral and into the back. So what we're gonna do is we're going to inhale, rotate the dumbbell to the right. Exhale as you drag and squeeze the ball, and then rotate to the opposite side. So every time you rotate, you're gonna pause for an inhale into the opposite side you're rotating away from. Exhale as you drag, squeeze the ball, and transition opposite. Inhale. Exhale as you move. Inhale, breathe into the lateral side body. Exhale to twist and rotate. So when the weight comes across, we pause, we inhale. We've got a stable pelvis and a rotating rib cage happening. And then we're gonna come into movements where we've got the opposite happening, where we've got the rib cage stable and the pelvis moving. Let's do 10 of those. Rotate, inhale, breathing into the back and lateral sides. So leading up to this, we explored eccentric abs, right? When we have more compression and rotation, we've got length on one side. Now we're gonna switch, and you can keep the ball actually. You're gonna wanna have the ball there. We're gonna stay in our 90-90, and we're gonna work on some hip shifting. And so as we come into some hip shifting, you've still got the drag happening. And I want you to think about, as you shift, you're going to drag the knee into the ball and squeeze, and think of like a scissor effect happening. So a common mistake is exactly, well, a little bit of what Kara's doing. If Kara was going to do it, it would be exactly, thank you, sashaying the hips out side to side. But we want to think about the hips staying square, and instead we're kind of just shoving that femur back. There you go, Kara, nice job, back in the socket. And that ball is the fulcrum with which we are rotating through the pelvis. So our first movement, we had a stable pelvis, rib cage rotating. Now we've got rib cage stable, and we are working on shifting back and forth within the posterior. So think about as you drag into the ball with the inner thigh, drag and open, drag and open. So we'll do about 12 of those total. Nice job. All right, stay where you are, but we are gonna do a little bit more work with our crossbody reaching. So grab your dumbbell, and then you're gonna scoot back into a long lever. Now, you've got two options here. Kara, are you showing us on the wall? Melissa's showing us the foam roller? Yes. Is that what it was? Here's an option for an advanced one. Melissa's gonna show us that one. Kara is gonna be at the wall. This is gonna be a long lever bridge, and we're gonna do a cross-body reach. So setting up in the long lever at the wall, go ahead and reach that dumbbell up and overhead, and then come into a single leg. So Kara, pick a leg. Kara's on her right leg. And so she's going to rotate the weight to the same side of the foot on the wall. And she's gonna take an inhale, And then she's going to exhale, switch, place the opposite foot on the wall, rotate, and inhale. So the inhale is just like our 90-90 we just did, but now we're adding the challenge of that unilateral, so that single leg with the rotation and getting that rib cage rotating. Stable pelvis, single leg. Think about something like running. Like, how can we train for a single leg support while we need rotation at the rib cage? Now, Melissa's showing us a little bit more of an advanced version where she's got the foot on the roller and she's holding a bridge and alternating. Same thing, she's rotating toward the working leg. Exhale as she switches legs, inhales again, and breathing into the side body. So let's do about 12 of those total. Just starting to feel that difference in the progression from our warm-up to a little bit more work and challenge. So as we create these reciprocal alternating movements, are you struggling to keep your pelvis stable? Is your pelvis rocking side to side as the arms move? Do you find the pelvis comes along with you, or can you maintain that stability? Perfect. Come on up. We're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to use a band anchored at the wall for a Pallof press variation. You're going to want your band anchored somewhere secure about the height of your hips. And the working leg is going to be the leg closest to the wall. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your band and then you're going to press it out in front of you. And you're going to hold that Pallof press. So you want enough resistance that that band wants to pull you toward the wall before you start. And then they're in that nice split stance or staggered position. And we're going to do an upright split squat. Inhale down, exhale up. We're going to do 10 of those on each side. So the band wants to pull you toward the wall. You need to work harder through the front leg to anchor down through the inner edge of the foot. That makes us target hip internal rotation more of the working leg. So what we've got happening is we've got a stable rib cage and obliques, and then we've got our pelvis moving. So you can start to see this dichotomy that happens when we can train this way, especially if you struggle with hypermobility. We can get locked up if we have no sense of stability at all in our body. So if we keep stability in one area, we can get mobility in the next and start to train those concepts. So they're switching to the opposite side. That core is working to stay stable with the rib cage. And as we lower, we get hip internal rotation. And we're also teaching the pelvic floor how to ascend. So we're getting some nice pelvis motion happening while we stay stable through the upper body. 10 on that side. Awesome. Now we're also going to use our band again, or if you have a TRX by chance, but we're going to anchor that a little bit higher. And this is going to give us support through the upper body. And we're getting mobility through the lower body, through our pelvis, and we're getting stability in the upper body. So again, we're starting to move different parts of our body to achieve these movement skills. So they've got squat wedges. What this is doing is taking the ankle range of motion out of the equation so they can stay more vertical in a squat. If you don't have wedges, which you very well may not, roll up a yoga mat and slide it underneath your feet. That will do the trick. So with this upper extremity support, they're not going to be rounded over. So they've got their nice upright position. They're going to lower on down into a mid-range squat. So just like that, they're going to pause there. And then those hip shifts we did on the wall, they're going to start to play around with shifting back and forth. Now it's not out to the side. So we think about if we dragged our heel into the ground, do we get this scissoring effect through the knees, like each knee comes forward and back of one another. And we're getting stability in the upper body, mobility in the bottom. So we'll do about 10 to 12, and then I want you to come on up. We'll take a quick break, and we're going to explore a different way, a little bit next advancement of this concept. So while they rest, I'll explain it to you, is you are going to lower down on an inhale, exhale, shift the hip back, pause for an inhale, exhale, come on up, inhale down, exhale, shift, Inhale, exhale, up. And you can do that on alternating sides and start to notice getting this reciprocal movement. So it's a shift on an exhale, inhale, stay, exhale, push on up. So you'll feel more load through that shifted side, and then notice the side to side difference. We'll do 8 of those. Just 8 total, so 4 each side. Inhale down. Exhale, drag and shift, scissor the hips. Inhale, exhale, up. Nice job. So just using as much upper extremity support as you need. The emphasis here is on the pelvic mobility, but we're staying stable through the upper body so that we're able to get that pelvic mobility. All right, come on down to the ground. We're going to explore a movement we've already seen before, but you can kind of explore it through this lens of our emphasis today, which is when we have stability in one area, we get more mobility in another. So grab a dumbbell. We're going to come down to hands and knees for our bare weight pull through or weight drag, which we explored when we were first starting to talk about just rib cage rotation and how we move breath through the rib cage. So here, all I want you to think about is you could do this in a, just hands and knees. And Melissa's going to reach her left hand through for the weight, and then she's going to pull through on an exhale. So your inhale could be a reach through. We've got the rib cage rotating, and we pull on the exhale. But as far as today's reference, it is pelvis staying nice and neutral, movement through the rib cage. So nice reach. You can inhale into that side body, exhale as you pull, but we don't have the entirety of her body dropping with us. Her hips not dropping as she rotates over. So if you ever feel locked up in one area, when we feel unstable in general, we lose rotation as a whole. When we don't have our stack of our ribs and pelvis and we live in a more extended state, we lose rotational through the rest of the joints. When we come back to a stack, we can learn stability, we can have mobility in other areas as well. It's about 12 of those. How many did you guys do? 8. All right. Nice positioning on both of them. If you're not sure if you're getting movement at the pelvis, you can always put a yoga block on top right over that area. And if that yoga block is your feedback, you feel rocking, or if it falls off, we know that we're not staying nice and stable through the lumbar spine. Okay, grab your towel. We're going to do a little bit of some core movement while we focus on some eccentric abs and rib cage mobility. And then also, grab a block or a ball between your legs. Just getting some extra steps in today. All right, ball or block between the legs, and then you've got your towel out in front of you. Nice tall position, and then a slight lean back. Now with the towel, you don't want to crunch and reach too much, so we want to stay nice and upright. And then what we're going to do is we're going to inhale as we reach forward, exhale as you rotate the towel, squeeze the ball. So the rotation is only happening through the rib cage, and then you come back up and you switch to the opposite side. So use the ball to squeeze. This is going to get pelvis staying in that neutral position, and then we rotate through the midline. So we exhale, rotate, pause for an inhale. We get that rotation. Breathe into that side body. So those first concepts we started with. Let's do 12. Stable pelvis, rotating rib cage. Nice job. Slight lean back, nice upright position. Now we're gonna bring it all together. So you're gonna see a movement of the thorax and the pelvis happening together. Grab a foam roller. We're gonna start at the wall. And so you're gonna hear this cued differently. So essentially you're gonna face the same direction both times, but we're gonna have the foam roller separate. So when you're gonna come into a kickstand hinge, we're gonna have the foam roller to the outer edge of the right leg. When we push into the roller, it's gonna help open the pelvis away. And then on our left side, we're gonna have the opposite. We're gonna have our inner thigh pressing into it. Now they're just gonna use a light dumbbell, and we're gonna hold the dumbbell in the same hand the whole time too. So why don't we do our left leg first? So left leg driving into the foam roller, left leg forward, right leg kickstand back. Weight in the right hand. And if you don't have a weight, that's okay too. We'll play around with some hand reaches. Soft knee. So we're coming into a hinge, and then you're just gonna hinge forward. As you press into that roller, you start to feel how your pelvis rotates over the working leg, and you come up and we rotate out of it just by movement of the hinge itself. So we'll do 8 of those. Noticing how pressing into the roller starts to create some relative rotation through the lower limb. And then after 8, you're gonna stay on that side, you'll put the weight down, we're gonna play around with some hand reaches as well. Nice. All right, so put the weight down, and we're gonna just play around with some hand reaches here where we're still in that same hinge position. As you lower down, you think about reaching and lengthening over that leg. You come up, you can think about opening as you rotate opposite. And so here's where we're putting together pelvis and rib cage, working together with these reaches as we load over that leg. And then as we come up and out, you're gonna feel more relative outer edge of your foot. You're gonna feel a different part of your glute working, and that rib cage as a whole starts to rotate back in different directions. And we start to see now how those two have come together, mimicking the way we move in how we walk and run and work in power movements too. About 8 of those, and then we'll try the opposite leg. We've got one more movement for you before we wrap it up. All right, right leg comes forward, left leg back. If you're using a weight, you can still use the same side hand because this is gonna emphasize our glute max and is gonna help rotate us away as well. So go ahead and inhale down, exhale up. You're pushing the outer edge of the knee into that roller. And as you come down, you're loading. And as you exhale, you almost open opposite direction. We'll do 8, then we'll do 8 with some hand reaches. All right. Weight down, same thing. Think about rotating over, coming up and opening, finding that movement through both the pelvis and the rib cage. And as the ribs move, we've been exploring that rotation. Remember, the ribs move back in space and not forward. So staying in the stack, not coming into some extension moment. As we reach, we lengthen, exhale, open. Nice job. About 8 of those. And then we're gonna grab our bench. Bench and a light weight, maybe 5, 8 pounds max. So this is gonna be an elevated plank. We're gonna do a little bit of a reach through and we're gonna open. So we're getting some What you're gonna do is you're gonna have a weight in one hand as you come into a plank position. So you're gonna open up on an exhale. Inhale as you pivot and reach through. You're pressing away through that upper arm. So just like our serratus work the day before, we're pressing away. We reach, inhale, exhale as we pivot and open and get the weight up and around. As you reach the weight down and under, you're getting posterior expansion. Melissa's gonna press away through that supporting arm, nice and strong in the serratus. And then we pivot and open. Turning at the pelvis, so you see some rotation. We're still getting those breath concepts. Let's do 6 on each side. And we'll finish with some rib cage mobility. Now the arm that's on the bench, we want to push away the whole time. Think about that scapula hugging the back body. Push away, push away. There we go. Not locked out in the elbow. Harder than it sounds. So no, right? Yes. Underneath, inhale, exhale, pivot and open. Good job, Kara. So again, you keep seeing those foundational day one concepts keep coming back. How do we keep involving our rib cage mobility and higher level strength so we get those baseline foundational concepts coming through into our exercise and keep pushing us forward toward that bigger picture pelvic floor and core goals. All right, grab your ball. Let's just lay on down on top of it. We're actually gonna put it just at the lower angle of the ribs, and we're gonna do some crocodile breathing. This is gonna help, again, posterior expansion, getting the rib cage back in space, and then it helps us breathe into the back body. And that is where we talk about our nervous system a lot with our breathing too, and our vagus nerve lives in our posterior mediastinum, as it's called. And when we can block the front body and really push air to the back, we get to have our vagus nerve stimulated more, which just helps with our parasympathetic and our rest and digest. So lots of pelvic floor and core is related to being just in this sympathetic overdrive. It chooses pain and tension pathways. It promotes more blood flow when we come back to our rest and digest. So definitely another tool in the toolbox. All right, take your time coming on up from that position or stay for longer if you have time. Nice job today in day 6. I look forward to wrapping it up with you in day 7 as we put all of our concepts together.